Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. I'm your host Terry. So today is June 5th, June 5, 6/5/23 is the date. I'm coming to you from Ontario, Oregon, just across the Snake River, I believe. Well, I know it's a river. I'm pretty sure it's a Snake River, from Idaho. Anyway, I am here at the Loves. It's about 2 o'clock local. I've stopped. I have, so I picked up a load in Grand Island, Nebraska on, let me see, today's Monday, so early Saturday, or early Sunday morning. Drove it, picked it up around, around 3 a.m. on Sunday morning. Drove over to Wamsutter, Wyoming yesterday, and then got on the road about 3 o'clock this morning. Drove over here, so it was 605 miles over here. It took me about 9 hours and 50 minutes to get that far. So I'm going to give you some thoughts on my Peterbilt 579 here. Just my kind of, I'm at 2,100 miles, so 445 of those were miles that were put on bringing it from the factory up to Prime. So what does that leave me with? Around 1455 and change. So it's my 1,455 mile test drive. I like to call this the shakedown cruise, but I'll get to that in a minute. So June 5th, some interesting anniversaries or things that happened of note. On this day, Ronald Reagan died. That was in 93? And then author Ray Bradbury died on this date in 2012. And you may not recognize the name, but I guarantee you'll recognize the name of his most famous work, and that was Fahrenheit 451. It's a dystopian novel. Fahrenheit 451 refers to the temperature at which paper begins to burn. And you know, I've kind of mentioned this kind of not directly, but you know, there's a lot of people talking about, you know, pulling books out of libraries, pulling books out of school libraries, etc. And by the way, it turns out that a lot of these things going on are a very tiny group of people that are initiating a lot of these, like lawsuits or other actions to pull books out of schools and stuff. And you know, the thing is that, you know, when I was a kid, and here's the impact of this, right? When I was a kid, the best way to get me to do something is to tell me not to do it, right? I mean, how many times, I could tell you a bunch of stories of times when my parents were like, don't do that. And what did I do? I did it anyway, sometimes with not so great consequences. Like, I'll give you a quick example. My dad was a railroad guy. And back in the day, railroad men would mark the ends of trains with what my dad referred to as fusees. Now, you would know these as flares, except they're flares with like a spike in them. And what the railroad guys would do, the conductor or whoever was, the brakeman, whoever was, you know, making up trains or dividing up trains, they would throw the fusee spike into a railroad tie and then light it. Well, my dad had some in his car, and I was a little kid. I was maybe kindergarten, first grade. We lived in Florida. We had that big, thick Bermuda grass. I was out there in my bare feet, and all I wore was shorts, right? Especially in the summertime, right? No shirt, no shoes, just shorts. And I'm out there and I'm playing with those fusees and I'm flipping them, into the grass, right? And they're sticking in the grass. I'm spearing the grass, like I'm throwing daggers or whatever. And what's my dad say? Hey, don't do that. You'll end up putting one in your foot. I'm like, okay. And about probably 3-4 throws later, wham, right in the top of my foot. Now, it didn't go completely through because I didn't have a lot of mustard on it, but it punctured the skin. And I just remember between my big toe and my second toe, it just kind of hanging there inside the skin. Well, the same thing's true with these books, right? You tell these kids, oh, you can't read that. That's bad for you. There's stuff in there that'll make you become gay or something, or make you want to cross-dress, or whatever it is, right? Make you want to have a teenage pregnancy, right? What are kids going to do? They're going to get that book. They're going to be like, what? What book is that? And they'll find out the title. And I mean, I'm not trying to, I don't want to throw out a bunch of dirty laundry, but if banned books, if banning a book kept kids from reading it, we wouldn't have been looking at any of my friends' fathers' Playboys when I was an adolescent, right? We wouldn't have been doing stuff like that because we'd have been like, oh, your mom leaves Playboy magazine or Penthouse magazine on the coffee table. It must be like Ladies' Home Journal. I'm not interested in that, right? But no, what did their fathers do? By the way, my dad did not buy that stuff or have that stuff, so I had to rely on other kids to steal it from their dads, right? And they'd be like, oh, I gotta sneak up there into my dad's collection, go in his closet when my mom's not paying attention, right? Or get it, and there was even a joke one time about a kid with a gun. He's like, how'd you find your dad's gun? He's like, oh, he hides it under his Playboys, right? But the thing is, right, Bradbury's book kind of presages what's going on. And book banning, book burning is one of the traits of a totalitarian state. And so Ray Bradbury was an important author. Born on this day, though, Neil Patrick Harris, the actor, and also Mark Wahlberg, born on this day. I think they're born Wahlberg was born in maybe 81. Does that sound right? 81? I was going to say 91, but I think he's older than... Because 91 would make him 32, but I think he's older than that. He must be 42. So 81, and then Neil Patrick Harris, born in 2 years later, in 1983. So anyway, let me tell you a little bit about the truck. First of all, the ride and the handling, the comfort, all that it was advertised to be. This is, just a really smooth truck. It's kind of funny because it sounds like somebody's because the air seat makes that little psst, psst, psst sound constantly. I never heard that on my Freightliner, maybe because everything was rattling or whatever. But the seat every time I go over any kind of bump that's noticeable, it's like psst, 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 psst. So I had to get used to that a little bit. But it's spacious. I'm starting to figure out where to put my stuff. It's still a work in progress. I will say one of the criticisms I have of this truck is that the buttons are in disparate places. And I give you an example. So the overhead light, just right above me, that button's over here on the left-hand side down below the steering column. But if I want to turn the lights on, in the back, I got to reach way over here. But that button is next to that button for the rear lights is next to the panic button here, and it's in between the panic button and the manual override for the I lost my train of thought there. The manual override for a regen. And then, like, you know, the button for the fog lights is next to the button for the work lights in the back. And to me, the fog lights, the headlights, and all the lights should, you know, the exterior lights should be all in the same area. I mean, it is right below the knob, but then the work light should be over here next to these other lights. And then down below, so there's 5 buttons, but only 3 of them are utilized. And then down below, next to the ignition, is the check light button. In other words, to check all the lights on the truck, you know, where they flash and everything. And then next to that is the hazard. So you got 7 buttons, 5 across the top and 2 on the bottom, but 2 of the 5 across the top are not utilized. And I'm like, why didn't you just move those other 2 up? I mean, it can't be that hard. Peterbilt's supposed to be the gold standard of trucks. Then over here, in a place that I think would be way more convenient, at least for me, for the hazard to be, there's an entire row of 3 buttons, none of which are utilized, right? Which is Peterbilt's way of saying, hey, apparently you didn't have enough money to order enough options so that all the buttons would have a purpose. But my comment on those 3 buttons being there, you know, and having 0 function because they're not hooked up to anything is, why? Why don't you just why don't you just have a dash that either covers that up, or at least have a plate that can go over that and not have 3 buttons sitting there? It's like a contractor at your house putting in 3 2x4 junction boxes kind of basically all next to each other, and then just, you know, not putting any switches in, just putting plates in. Now, in a house, that might actually make a little bit of sense if the boxes are wired, and with the idea that, well, maybe there's going to be an addition at some point. You're going to need the extra, you know, the extra wiring. But this, nothing, right? Why? I don't know why it's like that. And then down below that is the dash dim lights. And then in another, and this is partially, I want to say it's partially Peterbilt's fault, and it's partially, and it's a lot Prime's fault, because Prime still wants to use Qualcomm. But my Qualcomm used to be like right here on the dash, but there is in-dash nav, which seems like it's okay, and I'm trying it out, you know, because for different purposes. But anyway, behind here is the button to lock the rear differential, to slide the slide the skid plate, and to, what's the other button? Oh yeah, to lower the bags on the truck. They're behind there. I mean, I don't use those buttons a lot. I did slide my skid plate. It was way back. I hooked this trailer, another shop debacle, but really it wasn't the shop's fault. But I take it back, it's not this trailer. It's a trailer that I took my first load out of Springfield with. But so when I hooked the trailer, I go back there. Man, I could have set up a lounge chair. I could have had a barbecue in the space between the back of the cab and the trailer. So while it was actually in the shop still, I slid the skid plate, and it's as far forward as it'll go, and there's still more room than there was with my Freightliner. And my Freightliner wasn't even all the way forward. But I don't need that much room to move around back there. On the occasions that I get in between, I really don't need it. But the probably both the biggest surprise and the thing I'm least surprised about this truck is and I'm not joking about this, the very first day I was on the road with this truck, the APU quit working. And if you know anything about the Freightliner I had all sorts of problems with the APU. And needless to say, so it was so funny, I got to my delivery because I hooked a load that had come into the Springfield yard. I got to my delivery up in Fairbury, Nebraska, and this guy came over to talk to me, and I think he had been a Prime years ago, and he's like, oh, you must have been a Prime for a long time, I noticed your truck. And I'm like, well, not really. I mean, I've been at Prime a little over 2 years, but this is like the first day driving the truck, basically. And I said, I did have this is so weird. I said, I did have a Freightliner. I liked the Freightliner, but I had a lot of problems with the APU. I come back inside the truck, right? I come back inside the truck and I realize the AC in the back that was running on the APU has thrown a code. I'm like, you bastard. So I reset it, throws another code, and I immediately start blowing up people's messages, including a tirade, a missive to Success Leasing. And I was just like, homie ain't playing this again. I am not, I said, every single day my APU doesn't work, you're gonna get a message. And if I have to be in a shop, you're gonna get 2 messages that day, every single time. And so they came back and they're like, yeah, we won't charge you until the APU gets fixed. Now, I wanted to get to Salt Lake City, but then my fleet manager was like, hey, can you take this load? And interestingly, where I am, I'm parked towards the sun, so that I actually think it's over 80. And so the truck's gonna idle. So the APU charge is now $75 a week. So that $75 a week that I'm saving is going towards fuel so I can idle and keep the truck cool. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of nice touches as you'd expect. The seats are very comfortable. I ordered carpet in here, and I thought it would be maybe at least carpeted up the middle here between the seats. No, it's just a little tiny piece of carpet in the back, and it's not even really nice carpet. It still has the plastic on it because I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna buy a rug like I had in my old truck, put it over it, because it'll easily get soiled. And so yeah, so that's not an option. If you're optioning out one of these, I would not recommend the carpet. I have a firm testimony of the front axle airbags. There's actually 2 airbags, and if you've seen the system, they're 2 smaller airbags that are on either side of the shock absorber, and it's a kind of an interesting setup. But yeah, it's nice. The ride is very comfortable. Got no complaints there. Everything else seems, the cruise control, Jake brake works fine. It's just a little bit different than the Freightliner. Just taking some getting used to. But yeah, so far so good. And the other thing about this truck is it's pretty dang quiet. I think I did opt for some extra soundproofing, but I am surprised. Like, you really got to get on this thing or really be on the Jake brake for it to get like loud. So it's a very quiet truck, which is nice because sound waves, sound vibration are fatiguing factors. So I think this is a truck that you could have a lot of hard days of driving in and not be as worn out as you would, say, with one of the stock kind of Freightliners or something, or another kind of truck. So anyway, hit me up if you got any questions. But yeah, so like I said, so far so good. Keep my fingers crossed, because the one thing I like more than anything in a truck is a truck that's reliable. So knock on fake wood here. Anyway, talk to you soon. Bye.